Committee substitute for House Bill 4600, require all ballots for primary and general elections be received not later than the close of the polls on Election Day.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? With objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having the bill read. No objections are heard. Gentleman from the 55th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We had a great deal of discussion on this bill yesterday. I think we all know what it does, and the short title itself describes that absentee ballots, if this bill were to pass and become law, must be received by Election Day no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, rather than postmarked and then received by canvass, which is existing law. That's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 5th, Doug Fluharty, is recognized on the bill.
Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
I have a question on how we had an amendment yesterday dealing with overseas military.
Yes, sir.
And it was shot down. I have a question how federal law now this will contradict, in particular the Uniformed Overseas Citizens Absentee Voter Act. And we touched on this in committee, but under 52 USC 20302, there are state requirements. And those state requirements state that receipt of the ballot is by election, that receipt of the ballot as long as they vote by Election Day. And we are arbitrarily saying that it must be received. So they go by when the vote is cast, not when the ballot is received. If we are now contradicting federal law, how will that play out?
Yeah, well, so number one, I don't think the deadline we've set is arbitrary. It's actually consistent with existing federal law for federal elections. So by example, 2 U.S. Code Section 7 sets a time for federal elections as Election Day. There's actually currently federal litigation pending on that matter right now. So this would actually be consistent with what the interpretation that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has determined so far on that. Now, with regard to whether a UCAVA ballot must be received by Election Day or that it must simply be postmarked, if UCAVA conflicts with state code, UCAVA would preempt state law in that circumstance.
Correct.
So if it's a UCAVA ballot and it would be determined that it can be received or has to be only postmarked by Election Day, then UCAVA would preempt this code section if it becomes law.
So under UCAVA, we're required to count the vote if it is received, if it is postmarked before Election Day. We're required under law. So how are we going to carve out the military if you're correct, and I believe you are, that it would preempt? How are we going to do that administratively in West Virginia?
The same way they do it now. I mean, they count votes now that come in after Election Day as long as they're postmarked by Election Day. So that simply just wouldn't change for UCAVA ballots. I don't consider it to be difficult or a burden at all.
But there's no exception for the military in this legislation now. We shot that down.
But UCAVA could still apply to the military ballots, so that should not be an issue. And again, we've talked about this before. There are 21 other states that require ballots, absentee ballots, by Election Day, not postmarked, but by Election Day, which is a firm deadline. So to the extent those other states have that same requirement, if they for some reason have a conflict with UCAVA, then the military ballots will still be counted as long as they comply with the UCAVA requirements. So this will not change any of that.
I appreciate you yielding.
Yes, sir.
Very briefly, Mr. Speaker. Look, guys, there was a time when we actually cared about the Constitution down here. Federal law does not require receipt by Election Day. It requires the ability to vote by Election Day, specifically for our military. We are contradicting that. This will be challenged probably 10 minutes after it passes, and it will not stand. And it makes no sense. No evidence has been provided this is necessary. Nobody came to testify. It's just an arbitrary, nonsensical conspiracy theory government that we run here. We govern by conspiracy theories in the fringe. We're not talking about fraudsters. We're not talking about schemers. We're talking about our neighbors. In particular, whom are we talking about? The elderly, the disabled, and our military. Those are the individuals who request absentee ballots. And we are telling them that even though you made a good faith effort as a West Virginian, a good faith effort to make sure that you participate in our democracy, that you cast your ballot, that you had it postmarked, and that we, the government, because the mail system does not run properly, we are no longer going to count your participation in our democracy. It goes against everything we're supposed to stand for as Americans, and in particular, as West Virginians. I cannot support that. I will not support that. And I will not govern by conspiracy theories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 7th, Douglas Sheedy's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former military member that has been deployed overseas, I can state specifically that months before time, all I needed was to take a copy of my orders to the county clerk, and I would get on a list to be mailed an absentee ballot. I was mailed that absentee ballot. I filled it out the same day and sent it back in the outgoing mail from my forward operating base. Those absentee ballots do not require postage, therefore they do not require a postmark either. However, when they hit the APO office in New York, they are automatically redirected to first class mail and receive utmost priority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 54th, Douglas Pushkin, is recognized on the bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the lead sponsor yield?
I do.
Gentleman does yield.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing this this bill before us here. What is the issue that we're trying to correct here? What's the problem, the ongoing problem we've had in recent elections that would prompt you to introduce this bill?
Well, the issue what we're trying to correct, like 21 other states, is to have a definitive deadline like now, but make it election day. And that was driven in part by the December announcement by the U.S. Post Office that the date that you provide them mail doesn't necessarily reflect the date that has been affixed to it as a postmark. Now, are there ways around that such that you can have it hand stamped, et cetera, on and on and on? This announcement by the Post Office in December, in fact, was reiterated and sent out last month by our own Secretary of State, who I believe is still in the South Gallery. Oh, he's left.
Lost interest.
He sent out a notice to remind people when filing for candidacy and absentee balloting, et cetera, that the postmark's not something to be relied upon. Recent research has also discovered that, and the Secretary of State's office has confirmed, that metered mail is counted as a postmark, and it is possible to fiddle with metered mail. So this would fiddle, change the date to prior to the date that you actually mailed something. So this would definitely make it a very clear cutoff, and I know we're all in favor of election integrity.
Okay. I think, well, a lot of us just want to make sure every legal vote is counted.
I can't hear you.
Okay. How would one change a postmark?
Well, I'm not a hacker, but if you Google it, I'm sure they'll tell you that it can be done.
Okay, because are you aware of any of this happening at all in West Virginia?
Have you checked every ballot, every postmark? I mean, you sound confident there.
Well, I've not. Nobody's been prosecuted for it. I think there are 5 cases since 2012. I did look it up. There have been 5 cases. Would that surprise you? There have been 5 cases of fraudulent absentee ballots since 2012.
I'm not surprised. I don't dispute it, but that's not the point of the bill.
Okay. Do you know of any cases in which the winners were announced on election night, and then after the absentee ballots came in, that changed?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Do you know of any instances in modern history, in recent history, let's say, in West Virginia, okay, the winners were announced on election night, and then after the canvass and after the absentee ballots were counted, the outcome changed?
I can't definitively state that. That'd be a better question for the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, well, so about maybe in your personal, one of your races, okay? You first were elected in 22, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and how much did you win on election night? How much were you ahead by?
One vote.
In your primary?
One vote.
One vote. After the canvass, how much were you ahead by?
There were 3 additional votes in my favor, a total of 4.
So you picked up 3 votes in the canvass.
Correct.
Okay. So this could have cost you a couple of votes had this been in
Probably not. Those were provisional ballots.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for yielding, sir.
Thank you.
Would the chairman of judiciary please yield?
Yes, sir.
Okay. During the deliberation process in your committee, were you able to determine if, let's say, if this law was in place last cycle in 24, and let's say it actually didn't change anybody's behavior, people still voted the same way they were, do we know how many ballots would have been thrown out had this been in place in 24?
I have no idea.
Did you bring any county clerks in front of your committee?
I mean, the county clerks were aware of this bill. I believe some did provide some input to the committee electronically or through personal conversations.
I can't hear you.
They certainly did. I mean, they knew this bill was in committee process, and we did have testimony from the Secretary of State's office, and some of the changes to this bill were at the request of the Secretary of State.
Absentee ballots.
Who is the chief elections officer?
Yeah, the absentee ballots go to the county clerks, correct?
That's correct.
So they would be able to answer the question of how many come in after Election Day, how many this would actually affect. But no county clerks testified during the committee process.
They were provided with notice. They certainly knew about the bill, and they didn't express any of the information or provide that information to us. So I can't tell you what numbers those would have been.
So none. They answered none testified in front of your committee, right?
The answer is none that they didn't testify, or the answer is none that no ballots were thrown out after canvass.
But we don't know because they didn't testify. Thank you for yielding.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not exactly, I'm just trying to figure out what problem we're trying to remedy here. I can think of and I've been following elections for quite some time. I don't know of any case in West Virginia where there was an announcement of a winner on election night, and then all of a sudden the absentee ballots came in after the fact and changed the outcome. I think what we always try to do is err on the side of counting the votes. I said it yesterday. If we want to talk about personal responsibility, well, the only thing that's within one's own ability to change is when they actually mail it. We have no control, unfortunately, of when it actually arrives. So it only makes sense that it's based on the postmark and not on the arrival date. That is beyond the voter's control, right? If somebody follows the rules, they get it in in a reasonable time, and then something goes wrong at the post office, they should not be punished by having their vote thrown out and have their right to vote taken away because of something that was beyond their control. I think if the intent of this legislation is to change people's behavior, which I hate to tell you this, what we do down here rarely does. People pay a lot less attention to us than we might think they do. But if the intent is to change people's behavior and get them to vote earlier if they're voting absentee, well, I would suggest extending the early voting period and possibly moving the postmark date. That's something that is within one's control, not the arrival of the ballot. I'm not sure what the problem is that we're trying to address here. It is creating more problems than what you're going to do. And we have no idea how many, but if this passes, in the next election, honest voters are going to have their votes disqualified because of somebody basing a piece of legislation on conspiracy theory, because they're still listening to somebody who's been making false claims about a stolen election 6 years ago. That's what this is based on, and it's ridiculous.
Gentleman from the 69th, I got Marple is recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to speak in opposition to this bill. I believe that it is an affront to the voters of West Virginia. Run newspaper ads on Sunday, radio ads on Monday to reach the voters. It's a waste of money if we're going to we don't have to run those ads if they're only going to count the votes that are made at the polls. A lot of elderly people aren't able to get to the polls. A lot of them don't make up their minds until they hear both sides, hear from the candidates that are running. And if we're going to eliminate this, that they can't vote and go by the postmark. Right now, votes are counted up till the time that the county clerks conduct the canvass. This is anywhere from 4 to 6 days after the election. On election night, they announce the result, but they know that the mail-in ballots still haven't been counted, and some of them haven't even been received yet. I think that we're doing an injustice to the citizens and the voters of West Virginia if they mail their ballot on Monday, get it postmarked at the post office, which you can do. They'll do it by hand. And they find out that their vote is not counted because they didn't receive it by the closing of the polls on election night. I've been voting longer probably than anybody in this room. I'm the oldest delegate here. I turned 82 last month. I voted from the time that I was 21. This was before they lowered the voting rate to 18. I urge that you vote this bill down. You preserve the dignity of the elections in West Virginia, and you allow people who mail their ballots on the day before election and have it postmarked. They'll never know it wasn't counted because nobody's going to notify them. Sorry, your vote came in too late. We didn't count it. Defeat this bill. Preserve the integrity of our elections, that every vote gets counted. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 100th, right now is recognized on the bill.
Will the sponsor yield?
Sponsor yields.
In your experience in my sister's service of the Navy, do armed forces members generally follow orders?
That's why they call them orders, not requests. So, yes.
Understand. I believe that would be the case for most of the veterans in this body and on the other side of the aisle over in the Senate. And you generally find that units will, in fact, provide notice of upcoming elections. There's actually a voting officer in most units, correct?
It's funny you should ask that question. As a young naval officer nearly a half a century ago on the USS Spadefish, one of my jobs, some of you might have heard this before, especially our listening audience. In addition to being welcome aboard, I was assigned the SLJO position, Little Jobs Officer is the last 3 words. One of those included, you are the voting officer. My role is to make sure everybody casts their ballot as soon as possible.
And in the Navy, they have Master Chief Petty Officers, correct?
That's correct.
And those generally will tend to ensure that the sailors in that boat or, ship, yeah, whatever, will in fact be informed of essentially every requirement that they need to have. And that would include putting in a ballot in time.
I think
To request and put in a ballot, correct?
Yes, you are correct. I believe most junior enlisted probably are more afraid of their Master Chief Petty Officer than some junior officers.
So they'll tend to follow those orders and actually comply with what the Master Chief is letting them know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Permission to speak to the bill.
Gentleman's recognized.
Okay, I was in the Marine Corps for 20 years. I voted every opportunity that I had. It was made clear to me that I needed to vote. I made it clear to my troops. We have what we call not Master Chief Petty Officers, but First Sergeants. Our First Sergeants are known to be pretty forthright. They are pretty direct. They don't mince words. They will go out and they will instruct our troops as to what they need to do. One of the things that they need to do to preserve our republic is to vote, to ensure that they're participating in our republic and in the elections that define our republic. I, frankly, was in the stinking mud of South Korea up near the DMZ. And I call it stinking mud because if anybody knows what night soil is, you'll understand why. It was freezing. We got our ballots after we had deployed. I filled out my ballot. I put in free. Free is how you get mail sent when it's personal mail. So as far as I know, it made it back. And I was able to cast my vote for the great Ronald Reagan. I don't have any real doubt about how we are voting in the armed services. If we want to vote, it is not that hard. We make decisions relatively rapidly. In this case now, as a major advance over the way that I had to deal with it, and I'm sure as over some of the other veterans in this body have to deal with, we have electronic voting. It is far easier. I could have had electronic voting in South Korea. Would not have been hard at all. You just simply get you find out what the candidates want to say, you go to a machine, you type it in. It's not that difficult. This is very easy, and that's how I think this is going to get done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 22nd, Doug Linville, is recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So there's been a lot of discussion and debate today on this bill surrounding, what problem that we're trying to solve. And I appreciate the gentleman from Kanawha bringing up instances of fraud since 2012, because in 2010, in Lincoln County, West Virginia, they stuffed the ballot box with absentee ballots. So actually, the minority leader and I formerly represented part of Lincoln County. And you can Google this. You can find it. It came straight from the West Virginia Gazette Mail. I'm going to read it to you. Ramey had conspired with Lincoln County Sheriff Jerry Bowman and Clerk Donald Witten to flood their party's primary with absentee ballots, the filing said. Witten was campaigning for another term in the Democrat-dominated county where the party's primary winners typically prevail the following November. Unable to run for sheriff again this year because of term limits, Bowman was running for circuit clerk in 2010, while Ramey had been appointed commissioner and sought election to keep that seat. They submitted false filings for absentee ballots. They covered it up. And something that's key with this bill is this. If you know on election night, or you have a pretty good idea of the totals, you can stuff the ballot box with additional absentee ballots that you falsified, right? And then all of a sudden you know the number that you need. 300 absentee ballots in Lincoln County were thrown out that year. All because of this. So you want to talk about postmarks and when things need to be postmarked by, right? With a Pitney Bowes machine, you can actually change the date, right, that you're postmarking something. So if you do bulk mail out of somewhere, you actually get to place the postmark on it yourself, right? So it's important that these are received by Election Day, not just postmarked, right? Because you can alter a postmark. It's got an internal clock in it, and if you don't connect it to the internet, it's not necessarily continuing to reach out and figure out for sure what day and time it is. You guys might have seen your computers do this before, right, and have an incorrect day and time. So this bill is solving something. And I'll perhaps leave it with this. This is a quote from U.S. Attorney Booth Goodwin. "The citizen's vote is the very foundation of our democracy. When that vote is bought or sold or obtained by fraud, democracy itself is in peril." United States Attorney Booth Goodwin. I agree with him. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
From the 80th, Eggert Williams is recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman of Judiciary yield for a quick question?
Just one?
Maybe a follow-up, if you'll allow it.
All right.
So I just want to make sure that I understand the process, because I've never voted absentee before. So I request my ballot, I get it, and then I send it to the courthouse. Is that right?
It goes back to the county clerk's office.
So it goes to the county clerk's office, and then under this bill.
Well, let me correct you. That's the way you would do it here in West Virginia, or if you were out of state as a paper ballot. You can vote electronically, like in certain circumstances, like with UCAVA, but just for you personally, your example probably is yes, you would fill out a paper ballot and mail it back into the county clerk.
Okay, so at the county clerk's office, at the courthouse, and under this bill, any ballot that comes in until 7:30 or 8 p.m. is good?
It's 8 p.m.
8 p.m.?
Which is when polls close.
Okay. Are courthouses generally open or closed on Election Day?
The courthouses will be, the courthouse is always open. I'm not sure if they would actually receive mail on Election Day. I believe that they would. think about that.
So you're not sure if the courthouses will even receive mail?
Well, the courthouse, the courthouses are never fully closed. There's always personnel there unless there's some sort of, disaster or weather event that prevents people from getting there. But I'm trying to recall if they would actually receive mail on Election Day. I'll look to council for that question. Yeah, I don't know if the post office, I don't know if they would deliver mail that day or not, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have, if it's a state, county, or local election, obviously that won't affect the Postal Service. On the federal election side, I think that they would, that may be different. I apologize, I can't answer that question for you. On the federal side.
That's okay. So under the assumption, which I think maybe we've both come to, we don't know if mail is delivered. I'm leaning myself towards it's not delivered on Election Day. Is it safe to say that this new deadline that's been established is actually 24 hours in advance, the Monday preceding Election Day? Is that the true deadline by when this ballot's got to come in?
If the Postal Service would not deliver on a federal election day, if that were true, and I'm not saying whether they would or they wouldn't, apologize, I can't tell you that, then you would have to have your ballot in the day before. But again, for a state local election, then they would still deliver on Election Day.
And for the state and local election, the feds, the USPS might deliver on Election Day, but maybe in my county, the county clerk, we have an election central. Nobody's at the courthouse to go get mail. So that could also be problematic to get those ballots in, right?
Well, first of all, I would say I would almost guarantee, I can't promise you what your county clerk would do, but I bet you would still have the mail delivered from the county courthouse to the election center, because people will still be there to receive mail on Election Day. Council did tell me that the the U.S. Postal Service will deliver mail on Election Day. That's information he looked up while I personally couldn't answer your question, which again, I apologize for. But, so with that being said, if council's information is correct, that the mail and ballots should be delivered on Election Day, federal, state, or local. And if the mail is delivered to the county courthouse, your county clerk could arrange to have it delivered from the courthouse to the election center.
I appreciate that. Are we requiring the county clerks to have that system in place, or could a random county clerk just say, oh, to hell with it, I don't feel like setting up the system to have our mail brought over here?
A random bad county clerk could do that if it wanted. I have a hard time believing that any of them would. I kind of trust our county clerks, but in the realm of anything's possible, they could not do their job, sure.
Okay. Thank you so much for yielding. And I too do trust our county clerks, which is why I don't know that this bill is really necessary. I had a close one time back in 2020. I had a close election. That was the big year where COVID absentees were being submitted. I think election night ended in a 5-member district. I was up by 29 votes. And I went to the canvass. I saw the hard work that our poll workers put in, counting those votes, that our clerks put in, organizing that. And after what had been a really nerve-wracking 6 or 7 days, they finally they think everything ready to go. They're going to announce what's happening. From my own selfish standpoint, I'm trying to figure out if I'll come back down here or if I'll have the chance to spend more time with my family. And then they say, wait a minute, the courthouse just called. We have more ballots that just got delivered by mail. I should have been upset about that. But at the end of the day, like every single one of you in this room, it was beaten into my brain. So now that I know it in my heart, that we count every vote in this country. That's the bedrock of this thing. That's important. And when you're talking about the military side of things, that they follow orders, I agree they follow orders. That's great, 100%. But now they're going to have to get their ballots in even earlier. People are going to be operating under a different set of facts many times in our elections with October surprises. There was that thing a few years ago with the whole bus with Billy Bush, the whole thing, you know, what happened there late in that election. I don't think that this is the way that we go about instilling confidence in our elections. You see dubious claims being made at the highest levels of government about our elections, and guess what? Words do matter. When we talk about random, this could happen, that could happen, cases of fraud that did occur, well, guess what? We found out about the fraud. We're doing a pretty good job of picking that stuff up. This isn't the way to do it. This isn't the way to treat our people who voted us in to say, hey, better have your homework in on time or else you're not going to have your vote counted. I urge rejection.
Gentleman from the 53rd, Doug Levitt's recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 5th yield?
Sure.
Thank you. So I've just been searching and searching and searching, trying to understand something you were talking about earlier. You referenced UOCAVA, the Uniform Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. Can you reiterate what you were saying earlier about the deadlines in statute?
Yeah, 52 U.S. Code 20302 lays out the state responsibilities. And among those state responsibilities is that federal law does not require receipt by Election Day. It requires the vote to be cast by Election Day.
And which provision of...
I believe it was subsection E.
Okay, so subsection E there.
That's between UCOVA and then the MOVE Act also. It's federal law.
So sorry, where in subsection E?
Subsection E is designation of means of electronic communication for absent uniformed service voters, and within that, the designation to the state under the federal law is that states have certain parameters they have to follow. Among those parameters, that through forever, is that Election Day is what counts. It's not an arbitrary number.
I'm looking at section E. I see electronic communication. Where are you pointing to saying that Election Day is the postmarked by Election Day is the deadline?
With that in the MOVE Act, it's always been Election Day. Can you point to any example where it's not Election Day?
Well,
in any state?
Actually,
federally?
In the state of Delaware, where our former President Joe Biden was from, yes, they have the deadline of being received by the close of polling on Election Day. In the state of Vermont, where Bernie Sanders is from, they have
And they have carve-outs for military personnel.
No, this is for military.
I believe they do. We don't.
The National Conference of State Legislatures has a lovely graphic. I will send it to you. It illustrates the 21 states in our nation that have the deadlines of being received by the close of polling on Election Day. The other 29 have postmarked or sent by Election Day.
You know what those states also have? Drop boxes. Do we?
Okay. Well, again, just to home back in. So, where in the MOVE Act will you point me to that citation?
I don't have the MOVE Act up. You probably could have come up to judiciary and gone through the questioning.
The chair will permit questions, not colloquially. Does the gentleman have other questions?
Yeah, sorry. Is there a place in the MOVE Act? Is there anywhere in federal code that you can point to?
I don't have it in front of me, no.
Okay. Thank you for
prepare the
yielding
MOVE Act for you.
I appreciate you yielding the time. Mr. Speaker, I have looked through. I've not found anywhere in code where it indicates that there's any preemption by federal law or anything else. There are 21 other states that do this. I understand there are policy disagreements that people may not like this as a deadline. And I understand that whatever we do, we want to educate our people about. But I do think it's a little disingenuous to claim that we are disregarding votes or that we are trying to disenfranchise anybody. This is something that is done in almost half of the states in the nation, including by very liberal states, and it has never posed an issue. Would the gentleman, the chairman of Judiciary, yield?
Yes, sir.
Do you have familiarity with the electronic voting requirements that are in fact prescribed when you read 52 U.S.C. 2302 in terms of UOCAVA, what happens, how military members vote electronically?
Yeah, they vote through a secure portal provided by the Secretary of State's office here in West Virginia, which I believe in the 2020 general election, I promise you, but I'm about 98% sure that all of the UCAVA votes in West Virginia were electronic. And that service is provided free of charge to service members through the Secretary of State's website. And then we actually have some electronic ballot access as well for disabled. Some discussion's been about disabled voters. We also have some of that available to disabled voters in the state of West Virginia as well.
Thank you. So because of the federal requirements that we comply with under UOCAVA, we have an electronic voting system. military members are able to use from anywhere in the world overseas. In the last voting cycle, there were no paper ballots that were mailed here, whether postmarked by Election Day or otherwise.
Well, the most recent information I could find before speaking was 2020. I'm not sure about 2024 federally. That was 2020. They were all electronic ballots that were cast. There are some states that still require a paper ballot for UCAVA. West Virginia is not one. We're actually one of the leading states on electronic voting in that regard and some other contexts. So we do allow that for our service members. So that's something we should be proud of.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage everybody, if you are uncertain about this, to go and Google NCSL Table 11 receipt and postmark deadlines for absentee mail ballots, which highlights the 21 states that have already done this. Thank you very much.
Gentleman from the 25th, Douglas Hornbuckle is recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very quickly, would my friend from the 22nd yield for a quick question?
Yes.
Yes, sir. You laid out that situation earlier that occurred, what, 15 years ago or something like that?
2010.
2010. Were those folks convicted?
They sure were.
Right, thank
They
you.
plead. They actually pled.
They were convicted.
I'm not sure that a plea is a conviction by a jury. They pled.
Yeah. Convicted. Thank you. Permission to speak to the bill?
Yes, Chairman is recognized.
First, under our current code, people will be held liable if they try to do anything that is an infraction upon the integrity of our election system. Those people were convicted. I believe in our judicial system and our current code. There is no issue here. I also find it very rich today that as we engage in civil discourse before we go to vote, we're not imposing a deadline on ourselves. But we're going to do it to our neighbors across the state. I find that very, very rich. And it's been said a few times of, what is the problem here? Is there a problem here? The problem is, for the past few years, we've had bill after bill after bill to restrict voting rights. That is the problem. We've heard from a couple people on this House floor today that hasn't really been brought up much is the challenges that we're bringing to our county clerks. Have we really thought about that? Have we thought about the challenges that are going to be brought to the election day workers? I, like some of you all in here, I had to do that before just to be able to get by, to work on election day a couple extra shekels. And any of my friends in here that have done that, you know that it's complete chaos. It's a lot of running around, and you've got to do all the things. There's no capacity to handle these things. And then going back to our neighbors, the disenfranchisement. I'm going to stand with Granny and Pawpaw today. The ones that, and some of us in here, through no fault of their own, they might have to go to that doctor's appointment to get a checkup, or even worse, they've got cancer, or they just became ill. And for no fault of their own, they couldn't meet that specific day. That they couldn't do that. West Virginia, the state that I love, it is very rural. It's very rural. Our systems are currently not efficient enough to help my good friends who might live in a holler, who might have issues, and they just need a day or two to be able to engage in the process of voting and civic engagement. It's going to affect the vast majority of West Virginians. And last but not least, we talk about our veterans and our military personnel. And we've gone back and forth about this, the folks that are overseas and what they're doing. But I just want you all to imagine. Close your eyes and imagine that we have military personnel that are going outside of their jurisdiction for unforeseen circumstances and an issue arises. We don't have to imagine West Virginia National Guard taken out of our state to go do something, and they're hurt, they're maimed, even killed. And they're sitting inside that hospital, and they don't have the opportunity to meet this deadline today that we're going to put on them. Those people that are fighting for us, we shouldn't tread on them. Oppose this bill. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 88th, Delegate Hillenbrand is recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So today we've had an awful lot of folks pulling at our heartstrings talking about the military, many of whom never wore the uniform. Those that wore the uniform seem to think this isn't an issue. There's been a lot of statements made about UCAVA, kind of trying to cloud the issue. You can look this up just as well as I can. Federal requirements on UCAVA do not in itself lay out a specific postmark versus a receipt deadline for counting ballots. Instead, it sets broad procedural protections for uniformed service members and overseas voters, such as sending ballots early, at least 45 days before a federal election, and allowing registration, absentee ballot requests, and ballot submissions without certain state formalities. The Act specifically does not explicitly require the states count every ballot postmarked by Election Day and received later. Yesterday, I took the time to talk with Mr. Scott Weidman, the director of the Federal Voting Assistance Program at the U.S. Department of War. A lot of people ask questions, well, how does the military vote when they're doing this or that or whatever? And he spelled it all out for me. My notes read, first, the military are covered, as we've already talked about, since 1986 by UCAVA. Secondly, West Virginia military voters can absentee vote electronically. In the last 10 to 15 year time frame, Mr. Weidman was uncertain on this, something that was not available when I was a young naval officer. Mailed ballots have what's called an 11 DOD label affixed to them. 11 DOD label. Never heard of it before. The USPS guarantees, and we all know that probably should be in quotes, 7-day expedited delivery. However, in 2024, they achieved 5.8 days. In the context of absentee ballots, an 11 DOD label refers to a Department of Defense label 11, a special mailing label used in the military postal service. Here's what it means in plain English. DOD label 11 is an official military mailing label used to send mail from overseas military locations to the United States. It provides a stateside USPS entry point, often New York or San Francisco. Mr. Weidman told me primarily Chicago. So the mail can be carried through the military mail system and then injected into the USPS without normal international postage. Now, how it relates to an absentee ballot, when a service member or eligible overseas voter mails an absentee ballot from an AFPO or FPO or DPO address, the ballot may be placed in a pouch or envelope bearing a DOD label 11. This allows the ballot to travel postage-free under federal law. Once it reaches the USPS gateway in the U.S., the ballot's treated like domestic first-class mail, not international mail. And why this matters is it speeds delivery compared to commercial international mail. It ensures ballots are not rejected for insufficient postage, and it maintains chain of custody within the military mail system. It also helps comply with UCAVA. What it does not mean, it is not a ballot tracking number, it's not a voter identification, it does not indicate how someone voted, only how the mail was transported. Once the USPS mail system 11 DOD label mail is placed, once in the USPS mail system, the 11 DOD label mail is placed in the express mail and then proceeds like normal express mail, including delivery on Election Day. Knowing that paper ballots may enter the USPS mainstream any number of ways, base mail, Army Post Office, shipboard postal for large ships, fleet post offices, mail is all sent generally by air to Chicago, as I said before. where it's postmarked, if it has not previously been postmarked, and then mailed express. You can ask to have the ballot hand canceled even if it doesn't require postage when it's placed in the military post office. I already said that. It is noteworthy to mention that on large ships like an aircraft carrier, they have their own postal service on board. Previously, the mail on a carrier was given to a postal clerk, a rated enlisted person now called a logistics specialist who has special postal qualifications to handle postal operations. Carriers frequently have daily mail delivery via the Carrier Onboard Delivery Aircraft, called the COD. Smaller vessels and submarines frequently hold their mail until they get to a port. And how that actually works, the mail's collected on board. The sailors address the mail to or from the FPO or APAA address. The vessel's designated postal clerk prepares and bags the mail. The mail is then transferred ashore, but not to local mail. When the vessel pulls into a foreign port, the mail is turned over to a U.S. Navy activity, a U.S. embassy or consulate, or a nearby fleet post office or military post office. The mail never enters the host nation's postal system. Mail error or secure transport then occurs. Outbound mail is flown via military aircraft or contracted DoD airlift, or secure diplomatic or military courier routes. Mail is containerized and documented under military postal service rules. DoD Label 11 is used to move the mail such that it goes through these designated USPS gateways. It allows it to travel postage-free outside of those international mail rules. Some vessels, submarines, mostly are deployed for long periods of time, more than 60 days without servicing. The process to vote is exactly the same. So the question becomes, what happens if the timing is tight? If there's concern a state ballot won't arrive on time, there is a federal write-in absentee ballot process. Sailors can vote using the federal write-in absentee ballot, a backup ballot allowed under federal law. This is very common for submarines and special operation units. And as I told you, when I was a young naval officer, that was one of my jobs, is to make sure people got those ballots and got them posted immediately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
Are there other members who wish to speak on passage of the bill? If not, does the gentleman of the 55th wish to close debate on the bill? The gentleman waives the right to close debate on the bill. The question before the House, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will please close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 79 ayes, 17 nays, 3 members absent. Majority of the members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4600.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the